The news hit Atlanta like a thunderclap. Caleb McGarry, the rock of the Falcons' offensive line, is going to miss significant time. And in the NFL, when a cornerstone falls, the ripple effect is immediate. The Falcons could not sit and wait. They had to act fast. And they did. Atlanta pulled the trigger on a trade today, sending a conditional seventh-round pick in 2027 to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for offensive lineman Michael Jarrell. On paper, it looks like a small move. A late-round pick for a swing tackle who barely held onto his roster spot in Seattle. But in reality, this is much bigger. This is a move born out of urgency, out of survival, and out of the need to keep the offense alive without McGarry holding down the edge. Here's where the story gets interesting. Jarrell's very first NFL game? It came against the Falcons. Now, fate has brought him full circle, back to Atlanta, this time not as an opponent, but as a protector. Seattle could afford to let him go after bringing in Josh Jones, leaving Jarrell on the outside looking in. But for the Falcons, this wasn't about luxury. It was about necessity. They needed someone who could step in immediately, someone who could plug the massive hole left by McGarry's absence. Jarrell may not be a household name, but he's tough, versatile, and now he's walking into one of the most critical roles on this Falcons roster. The cost? Minimal. The impact? Potentially massive. Because in the NFL, one injury can derail a season, unless you find the right answer at the right time. Atlanta believes Michael Jarrell might just be that answer. When Caleb McGarry went down, the Falcons faced one of those moments that can define a season. Protecting a young quarterback like Michael Penix Jr. is not optional, it's survival. And in the NFL, survival starts in the trenches. Atlanta needed an answer at right tackle and fast. Enter Jarrell. He's not the kind of lineman who makes headlines with flashy quotes or viral highlights, but when you study him, you see a grinder. A sixth-round pick, already older than most rookies when he entered the league, Jarrell spent 6 seasons at Findlay, a small college program most NFL fans never even think about. Yet, while the spotlight rarely reached him, he dominated at his level, named the Great Midwest Athletic Conference's Offensive Lineman of the Year in 2023, starting 40 games, and even earning an invite to the Hula Bowl. That's where scouts began to notice. Seattle took a chance on him, and while it didn't fully work out there, his first real NFL start actually came against Atlanta last season in Week 6. And the Falcons remembered. They remembered the fight, the hands, the way he battled through every snap. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to leave an impression. Now he's in Atlanta, thrown into the fire at a critical moment. Jack Nelson isn't ready. Elijah Wilkinson is more of a patch than a long-term answer. But Jarrell? Jarrell has quietly looked solid this preseason, grading out as a better pass protector than run blocker, which is exactly what the Falcons need to keep Penix upright and confident in the pocket. This isn't just about plugging a hole. It's about giving a young quarterback the protection he needs to grow, and about a player who was overlooked, underestimated, and now has a chance to seize a starting job in the NFL. Atlanta's season could hinge on whether Jarrell is ready to turn that small school dominance into big league consistency. And right now, all signs point to him being more than just a stopgap. Sometimes in the NFL, a move isn't made because of excitement, but out of pure necessity. That's exactly what happened here. The Falcons didn't go shopping for a flashy name or a long-term piece, they went looking for insurance. With Caleb McGarry's health being such a huge question mark, Atlanta simply couldn't afford to gamble. They needed someone who could step in, hold the line, and give this offense a chance to function if disaster strikes. Now, let's be real. This isn't the kind of move that makes headlines or gets fans racing to buy jerseys. It's not a blockbuster. It's survival. And in football, sometimes survival is the win. The Falcons went with a stopgap, a player who isn't going to redefine the position, but can be trusted to stand tall when called upon. That reliability is worth its weight in gold when your offensive line is all that stands between your quarterback and chaos. If I had to put a grade on it, I'd call it a B out of necessity. Not because this player is about to become a star, but because Atlanta recognized a hole in their roster and patched it before it became a crisis. That's smart management. That's doing what has to be done to keep a season alive. But here's where it gets more intriguing. This signing was just the appetizer. The real story is about the cuts that followed. Atlanta made some bold decisions, and a few of them left fans stunned. A couple of familiar faces are gone, and the message is loud and clear. This team isn't just tinkering. They're reshaping. They're sending a message to the locker room. Either you perform or you're gone. And trust me, some of these names will surprise you. Every year, NFL dreams are born, and just as quickly, many are crushed. For the Atlanta Falcons, the cut-down process has been nothing short of brutal. More than 20 players have already been shown the door, and with each name that disappears from the roster, there's a story, a sacrifice, and a reminder that this league spares no one. The most surprising name so far? Easton Stick, a veteran quarterback who many believed would provide insurance behind Kirk Cousins. Stick simply didn't deliver the spark Atlanta needed in preseason. His performances weren't disastrous, but in a league where good enough isn't actually good enough, his fate was sealed. The Falcons may stash him on the practice squad, but for now, his future is hanging by a thread. And Stick wasn't alone. Running backs like Carlos Washington Jr. and Josh Corbin were fighting tooth and nail to carve out a role, but the depth chart left no room. Washington especially stings. Many thought he could sneak in as RB4, but the Falcons made it clear. Competition is fierce, and sentiment has no place in the final 53. Then there's Ronnie Harrison, Matthew Sinrich, and Ben DiNucci, all names now pushed aside in pursuit of a leaner, sharper roster. Even defensive veterans like Morgan Fox and linebacker Caleb Johnson couldn't escape the wave of cuts. For fans, it's a sobering reality. Players who just weeks ago were celebrated in training camp are now battling for survival in a league that moves at lightning speed. This is the cruel part of football. For every player celebrating a secured roster spot, another is cleaning out his locker, wondering if this was his last shot. The Falcons' decisions may seem cold, but they're necessary for a team chasing relevance and ultimately a playoff run. And remember, every cut tells us something about what the coaching staff values most. Speed, consistency, playmakers. The Falcons aren't just trimming fat, they're shaping an identity. Roster cut day is always brutal. It doesn't matter if you're a star or a long shot. The NFL is cold, and dreams get shattered overnight. The Atlanta Falcons just trimmed down their roster, and while most of the moves were expected, there were still a few names that stung. Let's start with the obvious. Ronnie Perkins, Quincy Skinner Jr., Josh Thompson, and Jake Hansen, guys who fought hard but ultimately didn't have enough to make the 53. Hansen's designation to IR was unfortunate, but that's part of the game. And then there's Kobe Bryant, who so many fans had high hopes for. He had energy, he had upside, but football is cruel. The hamstring injury he picked up against the Titans slowed him down, and then in the Cowboys game, he got beaten badly in coverage, a moment that almost sealed his fate. The coaches had to make a choice, and sadly, Bryant was one of the names called. That one hurt. But here's the flip side, the silver lining that makes this roster battle worth watching. Nathan Carter. This young man didn't just survive cut day. He earned his spot. Out of every Falcons running back that touched the field this preseason, Carter looked the hungriest. His patience behind the line, his burst through the hole, and his discipline on every carry showed he belongs. While Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier will obviously be the stars, Carter carved out his own role as RB3. And trust me, this kid is going to make noise when his number is called. Now, here's the big question for the fan base. Did the Falcons make the right calls? For the most part, yes. The roster looks sharp and disciplined. The only possible debate is Easton Stick. Some fans feel like he should have been kept. But even if he winds up on the practice squad, that's not a bad outcome. At the end of the day, this is what winning franchises do. They make hard choices. They move forward with the guys who fit the vision. And right now, it feels like the Falcons are finally building a roster with real identity. So let me throw this back to you. Which cut shocked you the most, Kobe Bryant or one of the others?